a video went viral on Chinese social media. A student from Tsinghua University was caught on video riding his bike while working on his laptop at the exact same time. Shortly afterwards, more photos of Tsinghua students slumped at cafeteria tables or buried under stacks of textbooks appeared online. Commentators proceeded to roast this insane work ethic showed by the students and tagged them as part of the involuted generation. Involution, or 内卷 in Chinese, is a term that went viral on Chinese social media overnight. It is now probably one of the most used words among Chinese young people. Before anything else, let me define the term. My definition of this phenomenon is unnecessary competition that takes place because everyone wants to be number one. It occurs mainly in labor markets and the education system. From this process, only a very small amount of people benefit. Yet it would be wrong to assume that involution only happens in labor markets or at schools. In fact, the concept has sunken into our everyday lives. For instance, it happens when we're watching a movie. Close your eyes and imagine that you are in the cinema. Imagine that one person sits in the seats, stand up to get a better view. By standing up, that person blocks someone else, and the one who is blocked is forced to stand up as well. In the end, everyone except those in the first seats are forced to stand up in order to enjoy the movie. The only reason that the first row sitters aren't affected is probably just because they happen to buy those seats in the front row. But what would they say? They would, instead of telling the truth, those first row sitters will tell you that they worked hard to obtain these seats. And you couldn't sit in the front row because you didn't pay your effort into doing so. However, something that everyone has forgotten is that if no one stood up, the best seats in the cinema would actually be in the center. Another typical representation of involution happens in video games. Sometimes if someone wants to get a good gaming experience, he or she would use money to buy new weapons or buy better weapons in the video game. That person then goes on and slaughters someone else. In order to get adequate gaming experience, the one who is slaughtered is forced to use money as well. And the poor slaughtered one is part of involution. Like in the movie example at the end, everyone either charges money or gets slaughtered by the others. Similar to the previous example as well, only a very small amount of people benefit from this competition. And in this case, it's not even any of the players. In fact, it's the video game company. From these examples of involution, we can draw the conclusion that in involution, almost everyone loses, and only few people who set up the rules gain. Now, here's the question. How do we prevent this unnecessary competition? How do we have everyone win, and not just the few people who are designated to win at the beginning? Well, let's look at a case of anti-involution that has worked. In a team building activity I participated at a summer camp a while ago, we were separated into groups, given a task, and scored based on our behavior. Halfway through the activity, the teacher who observed our group said, "If one of you would go help another team, I'll add extra points for you on your scoring sheet." And then she folded her arms and looked at us, smiling as if telling us to go on and fight each other for the mark. She also added indifferently, only one person will get the extra mark. And it's on a first come, first served basis. Now, this is a difficult decision for us. Everyone wanted to get a higher score, and extra points sounded very appealing. However, is it fair to give someone extra points all of a sudden, at the cost of giving our ideas to another group? No one wanted anyone else except them to get the extra marks, but they wanted it themselves. But then, thinking about it more, they didn't want to take the advantage because it would affect our relationship within the group, and it would also mean that our ideas in our group would no longer be unique. After a few seconds of quick eye contact and whispered discussions, our group mates quickly made a unanimous decision. No one in our group took the advantage. No one in our group went to the teacher throughout the entire activity to help another group. Looking at how our group's results would compare to the others, given that they took the advantage, we had no benefits at all. As a result, because no one took the advantage, everyone's relative rankings in our groups would stay the same. However, points individually will then be lower than those of the other group. This is a good example of how normal people can prevent involution, but it also shows that there will be losses in the process. What this example tells us is that for those of us who are in an environment of involution happening, what we need in order to fight it is a unanimous decision. To reach this unanimous decision, the group members need to have certain qualities. Firstly, they need to be very collaborative. And secondly, they need to understand thoroughly the idea that involution is hostile and we must fight it. And thirdly, these people have to be considerate of the effects of their actions. Our group was a small group. There were only 5 of us in our group. But what if it was a larger group? Would all these requirements still be met? Would a unanimous decision still be made? Would our group still be able to fight involution? That remains unknown. Now you may ask, what if the group can't achieve involution? Whose fault is it that anti-involution is not achieved? Is it the fault of those who took the advantage? Is it too much to ask everyone to give up an advantage in the process of competition? Well, I would say that it's the fault of neither. If someone were to take the blame, it has to be those who set up the rules and left people to involute in the first place. And lastly, I'd like to distinguish the concepts between hardworking and involution. Let's go back to the picture. I want to ask all of you a question. Does this image display someone working hard, or does it display someone who is stuck in involution? Some people say that the biggest difference between hardworking and involution is that whether the action is forced or voluntary. Hardworking is voluntary. It happens when people want to be the better version of themselves, and they want to achieve their goals. Involution, on the other hand, is forced. It happens when someone does something that they don't actually want to do. Referring back to the picture, if the student chose to work while riding a bike, then it's surely working hard. If the student did so because he or her were forced to do so, then it is a case of involution. However, I believe that another factor must be taken into consideration. Working hard and paying extra effort into a piece of work is an individual's own decision. And that decision is solely based on the purpose of making him or herself better, or to get more resources, while involution is the state of the environment. In the environment, the resources are often limited and little, which means that people have to fight harder to get those resources, leading to everyone working hard, and that leads to involution. Therefore, what involution really is that it's fighting for limited things, and those individuals' extra efforts are really just vain and unnecessary. The line between the two concepts is nuanced and subtle, so it's ultimately up to those of you in the audience to decide. Sometimes in an environment, it's hard to just be yourself and not be influenced by those around you. For those of you who already feel like that you've been swallowed in this weird loop, stop and ask yourself, are the limited resources really something that I need? Are those resources really worth me following the rules and fighting in vain? If not, get out. It is definitely not worth it. If yes, well, best of luck. Everyone is in this together. Thank you.